External Affairs Minister of our country, S. Jaishankar, is wrapping up 2023 with a high-profile visit to Russia. Vladimir Putin, the president of the country, has broken his protocol to meet S. Jaishankar, where he invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Russia next year. He also thanked India for the position on Ukraine that it has taken, which is in favor of Russia, and he's also offered to discuss the resolution on Ukraine. S. Jaishankar has, on the other hand, informed Putin about the progress made in the India-Russia ties in the past 2 days, and he has hailed the trade being in excess of $50 billion. Amongst the key breakthroughs made in their visit are Russia's expansion of hydrocarbon export, establishment of chennai-vladivostok maritime corridor, and Russia announcing support in military tech to contribute to Make in India goals. This comes as a crucial development before the 2024, and the big question is India's commitment to the global peace and importance of this visit to Moscow and St. Petersburg in this very special occasion. Starting my conversation with Ambassador Anil Trigunyat, and quickly a response from you over the 5-day meetings that are going to carry on up until Friday, where the External Affairs Minister has met his Foreign Affairs counterpart in Moscow. He has also met Vladimir Putin, and a series of statements and joint statements and public announcements has come forth. How do you, on a larger scale, view this effort between India and Russia to get closer even further?
Well, Neha, Megha, at the end, in the beginning, I would like to say that India-Russia relations are time-tested. They are valued by both sides. There is a special and privileged strategic partnership since 2002. President Putin is personally and heavily invested in this, and so is Prime Minister Modi. So I think that this relationship and what we are seeing now is this is an annual feature. We have the annual dialogue. This year, somehow it could not happen. We know why, because President Putin could not come for the G20. Otherwise, around that time, we could have had that visit. So every year, this is one of the few countries with which we have annual summits. Before the summit, the External Affairs Minister always visits and takes stock under the Intergovernmental Commission meetings, where from the Russian side, Deputy Prime Minister Manturov is the head. The whole gamut of bilateral relationship is then vetted. Exactly if there are any problems, there are issues, those issues are discussed. And the fact that President Putin has met or given an audience to our foreign minister once again reiterates the fact that Russia is heavily invested in this relationship and wants it to continue. We used to talk about a $10 billion trade, $20 billion trade. Today, the trade has already crossed $50 billion. And therefore, now there are new areas in which, during Prime Minister's visit to the Far East, that we had discussed about chennai-vladivostok corridor, which is extremely important from our point of view, especially as the Arctic is going to be the new Indo-Pacific. And therefore, India's presence there is going to be extremely strategic and very, very important. So I think we need to see it from that point of view. India is also very much interested in having a free trade agreement and the Eurasian Economic Union, of which Russia is very, again, promoting it a great deal. And including the Armenians have come back. And recently we saw the Prime Minister was there. So I think that there are many things. And as such, the relationship is so well integrated, irrespective of the problems that are happening. Of course, the two sides discussed, in my view, in great detail. And as President Putin himself said, that I'll be briefing about what we are doing about the Russia-Ukraine war. And he has been talking about how it could end. So that is something that could have been said. And Prime Minister Modi had said that to President Putin himself directly, that this is not an era of war. Then Israel-Hamas war is again another important thing. Houthi attacks, they are very important issues in which Russia can play a major role.
Okay, absolutely. Quickly getting in on the telecast with me, General Dhruv Katoch. In a situation such as this, what are the challenging points that India and S. Jaishankar most definitely has raised? You know, it's a closed-door meeting that has taken place. The official press communiques have come forth. But again, important matters, particularly when it comes to the Hamas-Israel war that is taking place, or we talk about the Chinese aggression along the northern front of India, and the tacit support that Russia continues to give to China, and there is this axis that is being created with Iran and China and Russia on the same side of the alignment. How does India at this point in time broach this subject with Russia?
Thank you, Megha. Megha, I think as far as the dialogue with the External Affairs Minister has taken place, I think the most important issue which would have been discussed is really the Russia-Ukraine war. And after that, there could have been some attention paid to the war between Hamas and Israel. Also, I think geopolitical relations, India's relations with the Quad, with the Indo-Pacific, especially with the United States, I think that would also come under discussion. But I don't think India's problems with China will figure very largely in these talks. For one thing, it is a border dispute. It is a bilateral dispute, and similarly with Pakistan, our issues are bilateral. So for this to come up with a third party, I personally have my doubts. Though of course it could have been discussed. I think the larger point which President Putin is trying to make now is that with the Israel-Hamas war coming in, there is a desire on the part of the West to actually cease hostilities on the Russia-Ukraine front. They can't keep fighting everywhere. So there is a window of opportunity now, I think, which exists to close the Ukraine war, perhaps on the current borders. That means what Russia has taken, they will keep. Ukraine will lose that. And they will come to some sort of a peace, or at least a workable peace for the moment. I think that would have been a major consideration. On the trade front, I think there would have been some great deal of talks because the trade is very heavily tilted in Russia's favor.
Right.
We are the importers. You see, we import the weapons from Russia. We import the oil now from Russia. And this increase in trade which has taken place is largely due to the energy resources which we are taking. But what is Russia getting in return? What can India actually export to Russia? I think that needs to come up for consideration, because once we start exporting to that country, then the trade relationship is more equal. At the moment, I think it is one-sided. Perhaps that would have been under consideration in the External Affairs Minister's talks. This counterpart. Megha.
Okay. Fair enough. Of course, the rupee-ruble payment system and smoothing of it came into discussion, and that was the joint statement that came out. Again, a difficulty with regards to, like you rightfully said, General Dhruv Katoch, that unless there is a balance of trade between India and Russia, which continues to be tilted in favor of Russia, that will have to be modified. How do we modify it? A big challenge over there. Quickly getting in Ambassador J.K. Tripathi as well. Speaking solely on the basis of the economic reliance of India on Russia, does it really matter if the balance of trade was in favor of Russia?
Well, you see, yes, the balance of trade is in favor of Russia, but it is beneficial for us also. And it is a mutual necessity, based on the mutual necessity. You see, the cost of war in Ukraine is about $800 million per day, and which is mostly covered by the export of oil, crude oil to Russia, to India and China by Russia. So it almost offsets. So that way, it is very much important for Russia to keep this on. Secondly, even if it is numerically not in our favor, but we must not look at it purely in terms of numbers. You see, we are getting oil quite cheap from whatever we have been getting in Gulf or from elsewhere, and that difference of price is partly or majorly offsets our disbalance, our imbalance. Secondly, you see, Russia, with Russia, as Ambassador Anil Tribhunath has rightly pointed out, we have a solid relationship for the last 60 years or so. And Now, with the north-south corridor have been discussed, and with the Vladivostok Chennai Eastern Corridor having been discussed, as well as the Arctic Sea route had been discussed between the two sides. These things make important gain for us. Say, for example, if Vladivostok Chennai corridor is made operational, then then our import from Russia will be even cheaper. But the problem here is the Russian crude is very heavy crude, that is in API forms it is quite less than 25 or so, and we do not have in our eastern coast, we do not have refineries which are capable to process this heavy crude oil. So unless and until we have these refineries, we won't be able to do it. We won't be able to derive the benefit from them. Then, as regards the discussion that would have taken place, or that we analyze that would perhaps have taken place between the two sides. My experience is that whenever two countries meet, leadership of two countries meet, it is not only the agenda items are discussed, or bilateral things, not only bilateral things discussed. In fact, each delegation or each leader apprises other of its point of view, its attitude towards various reasons, towards neighborhood, towards the various flashpoints that the world has. So I'm sure that during the discussions, both sides would have discussed Pakistan, would have discussed neighborhood, would have discussed China as well, though not in that intensity in which it is discussed when both sides are involved with one particular country.
Okay.
So,
all right. All right, fair enough. Quickly coming to Professor Nalapat, and can we safely call Russia to be our all-weather friend, keeping in mind that we have had difficult relationships to maintain in the past with America, or for that matter, UK?
Well, the fact of the matter is that Minister Jaishankar said in Moscow that this is the one relationship that has endured through the decades. In fact, from around the 1960s, it has endured and it has continued. So yes, I think the relationship will endure. There are many common interests, and despite the fact that, as Nelson Mandela said, dude, I don't expect you to be friends of every friend of mine, and please don't expect me to be enemies of every enemy of yours. So I think that principle is in operation where India-Russia trade is concerned. Now, 2 or 3 points I want to make, and that is that, for example, rupee-ruble trade. Let's say that the Russians agree to that. They resist Chinese pressure and agree to that. Then what Ambassador Tripathi was talking about, the crude, you could have Russian investment in refineries on the east coast of India, and these refineries can process Russian crude, and because it is processed in India, it will have a global market. I think that would be a win-win for both sides. It would be a way of using the surplus that Russia is accumulating. There is ample reason to believe that there are very many ways in which that surplus could be used profitably for Russia and, of course, for India. And I do hope that during Minister Jaishankar's visit, this is going to happen. Now, you were talking, Megha, about peace in Ukraine. We discussed that in 2022. If you remember, I've been very skeptical of any peace overture. 22 and frankly this year. The reason is the US presidential election next year. It is a reality that the Russians are really winning the war. They have got almost all the land that they basically want. I'm sure Vladimir Putin will talk to the Prime Minister Modi about exactly what the Russian conditions are for ending the war. The problem for Biden is that he's seen as the president who walked away from Afghanistan. and who basically surrendered Afghanistan to Taliban and surrendered those individuals who are moderate Afghans to the Taliban. Now, he's already got a very bad record in that sense. And frankly, the reality is, after all the huge media hype about Zelensky, about the victorious Ukrainian army, about the Russians collapsing, about Vladimir Putin completely, getting knocked out, all that tremendous media hype, if tomorrow Biden agrees to do the sensible thing and basically agrees to an end to the Ukraine war, he's going to be chopped to pieces in the U.S. presidential election, which is coming in November 2024. So, frankly, the politics in the United States may not really work in favor of the kind of peace that the world needs, and certainly Ukraine needs. So, I think Putin is now showing that he is ready for peace. I think that is his intention.
Okay.
Although I think it is very clear that domestic politics in the United States, domestic politics in Europe, it's going to make it very difficult for European leaders to admit what they should have admitted and what we in NewsX have been discussing from 22 onwards, which is that this is a lost war for the Ukrainians, and the sooner they end it, the better.
Okay.
But so again, I'd like to add that this relationship is a long-term relationship.
Absolutely.
And I think it can weather the Indian relationship with America and Russia's relationship with China.
Okay, fair enough. Patik, quickly a view from you, and particularly with regards to the Make in India campaign of India and Make in India defense campaign of India, and there has been quite the impetus that has been put from Russia's side as well. There is alignment that is being made, the defense manufacturing and the assembly that is taking place in India of the Russian equipment also goes on to show the kind of efforts that are being taken from the Russian side to fulfill India's dreams and goals.
Yeah, Megha, let me tell you on the larger perspective of Russian investments in India. Professor Nalapur rightly mentioned that there is a requirement they should actually invest in the eastern coast with a refinery. But reality also is that Russia is already one of the biggest investors in the energy market of India. The SR oil refinery, which is right now called the Nayara, was taken over by Rosneft. They invested almost around $14 billion. Now, secondly, yes, it is very true that we should go ahead with the rupee-ruble arrangement. They should invest more in India. For example, there's a strong possibility, and I would be very happy if it happens, if the Sukhoi Corporation eventually makes their commercial jetliners in India in collaboration with somebody. There are other organizations which are making drones in India in collaboration with Russian companies. But there's one thing that we need to understand from the Russian perspective. Now, that is, they are willing to invest in India, but there's a huge stockpile of rupee currency they have with them. What are they going to do with that? There's a limitation of we exporting commodities to Russia because it's a commodity surplus, commodity exporting country itself. What the Russians are telling India is that the Indian private sector must now invest in the Russian economy as well. There is a reluctance from the Indian companies because many of the Indian major corporate houses have investments from Western FIIs, foreign institutional investors. Because the Western brands have exited Russia, so there is a void, there is an opportunity. If that takes place, which means Indian companies investing in Russia as foreign direct investor, then the rupee-ruble currency will gain a lot of momentum because of the currency swap opportunity.
Absolutely.
In terms
do you think if there would be any hesitancy for the Indian government to allow for FII or Indian investors to then go and set up shop in Russia?
No. There is no hesitancy or resistance from the Indian government. The Indian government wants it to happen. Many of the Indian companies in the private sector have foreign institutional investment from the Western part of the world, which means the global north. They believe that it might impact the Western market. I think eventually that hesitation will go away because Russia, let's understand, is a big market. And also, let me tell you, if there is a strong Russia-China relationship today, we must not forget that Russia has no love lost for the Chinese. It is the West which pushed Russia into the Chinese arms. So from their perspective, they actually want India to be a big partner. We need to be taking the initiative as also a investor, not only as a recipient of investment.
Right.
That is the relationship they're looking at.
I completely agree with you. Fair enough. Fair enough. Point made. Quickly, I'm also going to again bring General Dhruv Katoch on a larger strategic level. When we talk about trade association that has, withered all sorts of challenges. There is this confidence boosting measure that has been taken. The 5-day visit of S. Jaishankar reflects that. When it comes to the Ukraine joint communique that had been put out during the G20 leaders summit, and Russia had commended India on being able to ensure that it is not just one-sided that favors the West and disfavors Russia. So all these incidents, all these developments, all these decisions from the Russian side and from the Indian side definitely showcase that this is, I think, across all the countries in the world, India has always, in fact, Russia has always stood steadfast in India's growth, and vice versa. This time around, when the Ukraine matter came into.
Yes, that is right. But I think, this visit is also sending a very much larger message across the world. The message is India stand on strategic autonomy. And while some people may think that, you are aligning this side or aligning that side, the point has been very straight. India is not aligning with anybody. India is looking after its interests, and the policy is no longer non-alignment 1 or 2 or whichever number you want to give it to. The policy for India is now strategic autonomy. So we are exercising our strategic autonomy to continue to have good relations with Russia. And that doesn't impact on our relationship with the United States and with the European countries, the Western countries. So I think that messaging has also gone across here in this visit of the External Affairs Minister. As far as the financial arrangements are concerned, especially in the defense sector, I have a feeling that though of course we have the S-400 deal has taken place, which is a very big deal, but over a period of time, our dependency on Russia as far as defense is concerned is going to reduce dramatically. I'm giving a period of say 5 to 10 years. In fact, say 10 to 15 years, our dependency will decrease tremendously, primarily because the indigenization effort in India's defense sector is taking place. However, I think we can, the tilt will take place in certain other areas, like in the space sector. And here, I think India can play a very important role in bringing countries like Russia and the United States all on board along with India.
Right.
The cooperation in space can take place.
This is already happening. This has been happening. And more recently, in more of these developments where our cosmonauts are being trained at Roscosmos, or for that matter, our astronauts being trained at NASA, and these joint collaborations that are continuing to take place between ISRO and the space agencies of both these countries. All right. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. And there are new anvils that are ready to be explored between India and Russia, and most definitely a one-way trade association between both the countries is now going to be now on the verge, on the precipice of moving on to a mutual beneficial trade association. So the future is bright, and it is going to be a wait and watch situation between what transpires between India, Russia, economic ties, and how our relationship with the country goes even leaps and bounds. Thanks for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.